If you're applying for disability benefits or help people that are, the path to success has never been more complicated. Welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast, where we tackle the difficult issues and interview the country's top experts to help you better navigate the disability process. Winning a disability case is hard and keeps getting tougher every day. We can't promise you'll win your case by listening, but we sure think it's going to help.
This really isn't that complicated. I mean, you want to win your case, don't you? Well, then listen to what I say.
Hey, welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast. I'm Chad Brown. I'm your host. And here today, we are also going to once again interview one of the top Social Security disability experts in the country. I have Christine Burnside with me today. Christine, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I've known Christine and her husband Ben a long time. She is a top-notch Social Security disability lawyer. She is the managing Social Security disability attorney for Deuterman Law Group, where she manages a actually pretty large and growing team of disability lawyers. She is a North Carolina board certified specialist, which means she's one of the few people in the country who gets to say she's actually an expert in disability law. 2012 graduate of UNC, Go Heels. Yeah. And I've got Vance Jennings on later, and he went to Wake, so I don't know what to say when we get to Vance. I know you're friends with Vance. Thanks for coming on the show. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. I know it's some real personal stuff we're going to talk about from when we talked before the show. But before we get into that, can you just talk a little bit? How'd you get into the disability space? How did you end up being a disability lawyer?
Yeah, actually, it's a funny story. I did not know that I was going to be a Social Security disability attorney when I applied for Deuterman, which was back in 2012, right after I graduated from law school. I actually thought I was going to do workers' comp, and I applied for the workers' comp job. And in my first interview, we were talking about my feelings on law. And I said that a lot of people in law school don't understand that law is a customer service job. You're there to serve your client. And that a lot of people really just want to be heard. They need somebody that is on their side, that they know is on their side and fighting for them. And the person who was interviewing me here, she stopped and said, "Have you ever thought about doing disability law?" And it's been absolutely my calling.
Yeah, I mean, we've been friends a long time. I know you guys do a great job. So it's one thing to sort of look at it. I know, and just personally from experience, you're like, hey, this is going to be great. I'm going to help people and I'm going to really be involved in changing their lives, all of which is true. And then you wake up one day and it's like, man, this is pretty hard. Like the rules don't seem to be fair. The agency's difficult to work with. Sometimes our clients maybe aren't as appreciative as like maybe we think they ought to be. But here we are. I mean, more than 10 years later, you run a big Social Security disability group. So what do you find rewarding about it? What's kept you in the space?
Well, it helps to keep in mind that while I'm coming to work and it's just another day for me, this is the worst time in my client's life. When we're talking to them on the phone, it's not just a Tuesday. This is the worst time that somebody's having. They're in pain. They're not able to pay their bills typically, and they're so stressed. So keeping in mind that, there just has to be a level of empathy there for what someone's going through. And often if they're calling and, having some big feelings, it's not at us, it's at the situation, it's at their loss of livelihood and their pain and their medical conditions. So just trying to keep that empathy top of the line is really helpful. But honestly, what keeps me going every day and like continually like fired up and inspired to do this job is just the fact that I get to help people every day. Law is amazing, but there's not that many types of law where you get to see firsthand the fact that you are changing someone's life. And every time we win a case, we are changing our clients' lives. And so that just doesn't get old.
Yeah, for sure. I know hiring is just a never ending sort of issue that you deal with in the disability practice. And I know we've sort of gone to the place where, we look and say there's really sort of two requirements to come work in the space with us in our firm. One, you have to be really smart. People really underestimate how complex just an even typical run-of-the-mill disability case is and all the pieces on the administrative side, not just the law side, on the administrative side. But the most important thing is you have to want to be in the space. You have to really genuinely want to show up every day and say, I know what I'm here for. I know what I'm going to get into. And that's where I want to be, because what you just said, you really do impact people's lives. And so, and I just know I don't know, you can't tell people like on the internet, like Christine really is this person. Like, yeah, I know you, I just know you, known you for so long. I know you really are. And that's just great. And that's why you
Yeah.
make such a good leader there at Deuterman. So let's talk about the shift though a little bit. I want to shift away from you a little bit, and want to talk a little bit today on the show about Social Security disability and cancer. I know that's a very personal thing for you. If you don't mind, do you mind talking a little bit about your experience with your best friend who had cancer and sort of what happened to you before you became an attorney that I certainly know has impacted your work in the space?
It has. So, my best friend from high school, she was actually diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer when we were 22.
Oh, wow.
And she fought it for 4 years and she did pass when she was 26. I was in my second year of law school. I've got my pink ribbon tattoo.
All right.
I sport pink pretty often. It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through is losing Kim and seeing her have to battle this when she should have just been, getting started in her life.
Sure.
But yeah, it was something that I think has helped me to have that empathy for the claimants. Going through a struggle like that and losing my best friend at that age, it's just you do see what our clients are going through,
Yeah.
and you're changed forever by something like that.
Yeah, I know. I talked to just, over the years, know a lot of disability lawyers and worked with so many of them over the years. And it's so interesting that really is sort of sometimes a common theme. I know with me, I grew up and my aunt had cerebral palsy. I watched my grandparents just completely give their whole life to her at a time frame when they just sort of sent off people who were disabled. I watched my mom a number of years ago battle and die from cancer. And so having that personal connection, while it's really painful, I think puts attorneys in a position where they really can't empathize. And I think that's the difference. Like if you're just, it's perfectly fine to be sympathetic to what people are going through, but when you're actually able to step into that space and empathize,
Mhm.
I certainly makes a difference. And, we talk about our clients all the time. I'm like, look, your clients, they do know how you feel. That you're regardless of your client's educational level or intellectual ability. Like if you don't think they appreciate whether you get it, whether you're emphasizing, whether they're really with them and there for them, they really do. And so,
Yeah.
while that's certainly, I hate that. You guys did some great things though right after that too. And we're going to get into this sort of issue of medical bills down the road here in a minute. But I know one of the things you did when before she passed and then after she passed, you guys did a pretty big fundraiser to help with funding and some of that stuff back then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that's so hard when someone you love is going through a struggle like that with their any kind of medical condition is just feeling out of control. Like you can't do anything to help. And so my sister and I spearheaded something that we called Paint It Pink, which was a charity event. It ended up being a gala and a silent auction. And the goal of it was to have it be something that would help Kim pay for her bills because she would need cancer treatment for her entire life.
Right.
Sadly, before we were able to hold the first event in 2011, she did pass a few months before, so she was never able to attend. But we held Paint It Pink for 3 years, and we ended up finding a local charity in Durham. They're called One of Us, and
Right.
what they do is they help breast cancer patients to deal with those day-to-day things that a lot of people don't realize come up when you have treatments like that you
Sure.
need. They help people with their electric bill because they can't work, or with their car payment or their car, gas bills to get from where they live to the hospital that they need to go to,
Yeah, sure.
the hotel bills to go if they need to be by Duke or Chapel Hill for their treatments.
Right.
So kind of the um, everyday life things that still happen that you still have to pay
Yeah.
as you're dealing with that. We ended up raising over $40,000 in
Oh,
three
wow.
years.
Great. Yeah.
And for a 26-year-old and 28-year-old to just have decided we're going to do this, um, it was a pretty amazing thing we were able to do in Kim's honor.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I want to get into some deeper topics on disability and let our audience hear some of your expertise, which is going to make a difference in somebody's life, because they're going to hear this podcast and they're going to be struggling with cancer and it's going to get through. But before we get to that, got to have a word from our sponsor, CBIG. So let's hear from them, and then we'll be right back.
Hey there, this is Kevin Rosenquist from the Disability Expert Podcast. Every week, Chad and his guests discuss the disability process and how expert attorneys help their clients obtain the Social Security disability benefits they deserve. But obtaining disability benefits is only half the battle. After winning your disability case, understanding Medicare should be your top priority, and that's where CBIG comes in. Disabled individuals must get their Medicare coverage right. Trying to understand Medicare can cause anxiety, uncertainty, and even fear. CBIG works with Medicare beneficiaries on disability around the country and is committed to helping those on disability navigate the complex Medicare process. Visit cbigcares.com today to see how CBIG makes Medicare simplified. Mention this ad and receive a free gift when you schedule a 10-minute consultation.
Okay, well, we are back, and thank you for a word from our sponsor, CBIG. Okay, so you went through this horrific thing to have to go through when you were young. You end up in this space, in the disability space. I know you carry a big caseload, even though you're managing the team there at Deuterman. I know you're still doing cases every day. So, we created our podcast really to do two things: highlight good attorneys, give good information to claimants. I want to talk about disability and cancer. There's a bunch of things I want to get to. We're not going to get to all of them, but I'd like to start with just sort of a typical case. Someone calls Deuterman Law, that they have cancer, or they've just been diagnosed with cancer, they're undergoing treatment, and they come in for you guys to represent them. How are you guys going to develop their case? What kind of things are you going to do to help them get from, oh gosh, I've got cancer, which is in and of itself enough to just, really that should consume their thought. The last thing in the world they need to be thinking about is, how do I pay my bills and how do I get insurance, which is where all the disability comes in. How do you guys develop cases? How do you work through cancer cases and help your clients that are dealing with that?
So one of the most important things when getting a case in with someone who's dealing with cancer and cancer treatments is understanding the staging of it, because how you deal with the case is going to really depend on how long they're going to have the diagnosis and how long the treatment's going to last. So someone who has stage 4 cancer is probably going to have a different kind of case than someone who has an earlier stage. I always hope that my clients come in with earlier stages that are more treatable.
Sure.
But if it is stage 4, then one of the first things we're going to do is submit a request for a compassionate allowance listing.
Right.
And
if someone who might not know, what's a compassionate allowance? Tell someone who doesn't know, what's a compassionate allowance? And without going into the weeds on that, just make sure they know what that is.
Yeah, so basically, there are certain medical conditions that are so severe and so devastating that the Social Security Administration has set out those diagnoses as, if you have this, then we need to expedite your claim. We need to speed up the process of your claim and go ahead and approve that case. I certainly hate when my clients have one of those conditions because they are typically terminal.
Right.
But if they are on the compassionate allowance list, then we would immediately send a letter with the filing of the case, or if we get the claim and it's already been filed, basically just to alert Disability Determination Services that this is a case that they need to have special processing with. They need to speed up their processing and they need to go ahead and approve it.
Right.
So going through the oncology records is always really important, because when you're going through that diagnosis, a lot of times the doctors don't speak as clearly, or you're in that room and it kind of goes, over your
Yeah,
head what you're dealing with. And so
for sure.
honestly, most of my clients, when they call us, are not aware of what their staging is.
Right.
So reading those medical records, understanding those medical records and being able to pick out not just the staging information, but also documenting, like, was there a biopsy, or how was it diagnosed, and how do we have the proof of the staging, because you have to give that to DDS as well.
Sure.
So, you have to kind of, after doing this for 13 years, you're a little bit of a doctor as far as reading those medical records. So getting the oncology records, looking at those, that's always an important step. If somebody has a cancer diagnosis and it's not going to be stage 4 or it's not at that time, what we're going to look at that point is not necessarily the diagnosis of cancer, but the limiting effects of the cancer as well as the treatment. And so this is something that sometimes people don't quite understand when
Yeah,
they're
for sure.
applying for Social Security disability is they say, well, I have this diagnosis. This diagnosis should get me approved. And it's not the diagnosis usually, it is the symptoms. So we would be looking for situation, what symptoms is the cancer causing? Is it causing pain? Is it causing difficulty with standing and walking? Things like that.
Sure.
And then if you're having chemotherapy, that's clearly going to keep you out of work. So we look at how long that treatment lasts. If you had the treatment for less than a year and the cancer has hopefully resolved and you're in remission, then we're going to look at if there were limiting effects caused by the treatments you had. If there's going to be, a lot of times we see neuropathy that's ongoing in people's hands, so numbness and tingling in people's hands and feet. That's usually caused or can be caused by chemotherapy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think in the preparation as well as the hearing itself, it's really important to get your clients to understand we have to talk about the problems that are coming as a result of the diagnosis and the treatment, especially medications and chemotherapy and radiation with cancer. I also think it's important that, we understand, like, we have to get your doctor on board. And a lot of times what your doctor needs to be doing is talking about, okay, it's reasonable that this limitation exists because of the side effects of the chemotherapy or the radiation. Also giving permanence to the limitations because, sometimes, there's sort of, I know in hearings you get judges like, well, we don't know how long this is going to last.
Right.
You and I both know it's going to last forever, but you need the oncologist to step in and say that.
Yeah.
So I want to shift just briefly though. So you guys develop cases, you work through them, but there's some misconceptions and misunderstanding on the client side often about how these cases work. I want to talk to you just about a couple of sort of big time topics that our clients get wrong a lot of times. So I want to start with closed periods. Can you just talk a little bit about what is a closed period? How do closed periods sort of manifest themselves in cancer cases? Because I think this is a real opportunity where a lot of people with cancer actually are eligible for a type of disability, but they don't think they are. So how do those work?
Absolutely. So, a closed period claim is a claim where you were disabled and then your condition improved and you were able to return to work. And so, hopefully, if you have cancer, you've dealt with that treatment and then you've been in remission, you may have been out of work for a year and a half or 2 years. And, my clients might think, well, I'm better now, so I shouldn't get disability benefits. But you were out of work for that period of time. So as long as you had to be out of work for over 12 months,
Right,
and then you were able to return to work because your conditions improved, then we can ask for a period of closed disability, which means you get paid for the time that you were out of work, but not ongoing benefits. And that happens, all the time.
Yeah, and I think it happens sort of on two ends. One, sometimes you get people who are sort of want to rush back to work, and you're like, look, understand the rules. Like sometimes people stay out of work another 3 weeks. I mean, that they actually would qualify, but often you have people, I think, who sort of come to us, and it never ceases to amaze me that someone has a period of disability. They actually go back to work, and then they actually come to see us after they've gone back to work, never even realizing they had an initial period of disability, but actually they found out they couldn't work when they were tried. And now we're trying to piece it together and figure out trial work periods or unsuccessful work attempts and those things in the context of the cases.
Yeah.
So let's talk about third-party assistance in these type cases. And really what I'm thinking about here is oftentimes when our clients are going through the process, they actually aren't, because they're dealing with the cancer, they're not able to help us in terms of really participating, but also this reality that sometimes our clients die in the course of the process. So you talk about how, there is an importance with third-party third-party interaction in these cases, it's a little different than normal.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really important to have somebody who you can contact when your claimant is not able to, they're dealing with their symptoms, or they're so severely affected by their symptoms that just answering the phone and having the call about the claim is too much. Or, like you said, unfortunately and very sadly, we do have claimants die. And then we need to have somebody who's able to talk to us about, if they're a family member, is this something that they want to continue?
Sure.
Because in some cases, we can continue and fight for the benefits that the person should have received and that should go to the family at that point. So just making sure that you have, somebody with strong communication skills who's going to stay in contact with you even when this gets hard for their loved one.
Right.
It just is so important in these cases.
Yeah, I think it's just important for people to understand that while we hope you get better and return to work, in the event you don't, we have to be able to pursue these cases. And a lot of times, I know a lot of times the surviving spouse, a lot of times who it is just so thankful because now they can use that back pay to actually help pay for funeral expenses and things that a lot of times they'd already say they exhausted their resources trying to fight and apply for disability, and it's really catastrophic. So I think, being able to get that help for them on the back end, even though it's not ideal, that's not the outcome that we hope for. It's certainly something that you've got to talk with your clients. I know you guys do, and it makes a difference. One final question. I've got a couple more, but we're not going to get to all of them. Can you talk a little bit about your pet peeve, my pet peeve? I mean, I own a Medicare agency, so it's a huge pet peeve of mine. But can you talk a little bit about, okay, so somebody, let's say they qualify for that compassionate allowance, and they immediately get approved, and they're like, yay, now I can get my medical treatment paid for, and you get to tell them what?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it just doesn't happen like that. And this is the hardest this is the hardest conversation that I have with my claimants, is that with Medicare, there is a 29-month wait from the
Right.
day that you stop working to the time that your Medicare kicks in. And so I'll have some clients who call my office just looking for some help. I was just diagnosed with cancer. I have to stop working to have chemotherapy. How quickly can I get my benefits approved? When will my insurance kick in?
Right.
And I have to tell them, if you stop working and you lose your health insurance, disability benefits is not going to cover that gap. You
Right.
are going to have over 2 years where you are uninsured unless you can get private insurance.
Sure.
And I think that is just something that is just devastating and doesn't need to be the case. It
Yeah,
needs to be changed.
we need to talk about the fact that you're actually on the executive committee with NOSCR. Maybe you could put a bug in their ear, which I know
We're working on
a
it.
lot of
We're
people
working on
already
it.
have. We've got to get rid of that 2-year wait period. It's
That's
completely
right. We're working on the
arbitrary.
We Can't Wait Act, and hopefully, this should be a bipartisan issue.
Yeah, sure.
Getting people with cancer or other devastating conditions, health insurance, it's not partisan. It just needs to happen.
Well, and we know it can because they do it with ALS. So it's a choice that they're making in Congress. It's not like there's some sort of foundational principle other than saving money that's applying. You don't want to give it to everyone. I think you should. I mean, everyone fusses about disability and they're like, well, we need people to go back to work. Well, okay, well, they need their medical treatment. If they're going to go back to work, they need their medical treatment. So all you're doing is letting their condition get worse while they wait.
Yes.
But hopefully that's something that'll change in the near future. And I know we'll make a big impact. You make a big impact. Your firm makes a big impact. I was hoping we get a chance to talk a little about your team because I'm friends with all the people on your team over the years. And but we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I do appreciate it. And tell people how they can find you. How can they get in touch with you if they're in Greensboro or Winston, or really anywhere, because you guys have offices in 5 places, North Carolina.
We do. Yeah.
Anywhere in North Carolina, you want Christine or her team to help you, how can they get in touch with you?
Thank you so much for having me today. It was a great conversation. You can find us online at deutermanlaw.com. You can also find us on social. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and that's just Deuterman Law. And we have a lot of fun there. So come check us out. And we've got offices, like you said, in 5 places. We're in Greensboro, we're in Winston, and we have new offices that opened last year in Greenville, Wilmington, and we have one in Durham for about 2 years. So we're happy to be making differences in those communities.
Thank you so much. And that's a wrap. Thank you for watching Disability Expert Podcast. Be with us next time when we bring on another one of the country's best disability experts, and make sure you subscribe. Thanks a lot.